The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is Anthony from ASDWA, and this is the May 2019 edition of All Things SDWIS. So today I don't have a Word copy of the agenda to post, so I'm just going to mention a couple of the highlights that we're going to hit today. We're going to hit an update on CMDP with Deric. Then we're going to talk a little bit about SDWIS Prime transition updates with Justin. And then we're going to do an introduction to compliance monitoring data strategic plan. This is a component of AWIA, and Michael and Alex Porteous will be talking to us about that. And then we'll close out with Otman walking us through the test cases for calendar year 19 Release 1, which is just an extension from what we saw last time. If you have questions at any point during the broadcast, use the questions panel to submit them, and we'll do our best to respond to those as they come up or as appropriate. If there are issues that are not on our agenda that you'd like to talk about, we can absolutely do that as well. So with that, I'm just going to kind of kick it over to Deric, and we will get started with CMDP updates. Maybe. Deric, are you guys there? You guys might be muted.
I have the microphone right in front of me. See.
There you go.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yes, no, maybe so. All right. So for production and pre-production promise agencies, like to let you guys know that we did, push out the DSC certificate updates that need to go into your local environments. It expires tomorrow, but you all should have been notified to update those certificates. If you have any questions related to that, send something into the Help Center, and we'll work with you as soon as possible in order to make sure that your certificates are updated. We provided instructions on how to update, those certificates to the Help Center. So that's update number one. Update number two, we have released the calendar year 19 Release 1 into production. We'll be posting the updated DSC to the CMDP Help Center by next week, early next week. We have reached out to production agencies to move them into pre-production with that DSC update. We do know that some private agencies were independently able to move to production as well as pre-production. A bug did arise in the production environment, which we have now provided a hot fix for. So that should no longer be an issue, and it was related to not being able to view sample jobs in the production environment that were pre the release, but that has been updated, and that should be fine at this point. So once again, that update is now in through the production environment, and what that update does is allow for the migration of the federal facility ID to the CMDP as a required field. So any questions related to that?
I am not seeing any, Deric. Thank you. Let's give folks.
All right, and with that, I'll pass it on to the next participant.
Excellent. Thanks again, Deric. And if you have any questions for Deric, you can put them into the questions panel, and we'll circle back with him in a minute. Next up on the agenda, we've got transition activities with Justin. Justin, you guys ready to go?
Yep. These are two just really brief things. The first item is the pilot. We had a couple of the pilot states that are expected to be among the first transition. That's Utah, Indiana, and Connecticut. They finalized their first criteria for adoption. So we're going to be working with those states over the coming months to further refine those and determine if there are any additional needs, including in Prime or outside for their own organizational changes as well. And then the second item is that members of the UAT team met during the week of May 13th through 17th, and that was to develop documentation for SDWIS Prime. That work is going to be ongoing, and they're going to have hopefully full documentation when Prime is ready for release. Right, and that it'll be a critical element for agencies that are planning to transition to Prime. So those are the two quick items that I had. But I think the next item on the agenda is actually mine too, which is the National Interfacing Applications Inventory Update. So yesterday I sent an email out to the IAWG group asking that over the next couple of months, the IAWG will begin working on an update to the National Interfacing Applications Inventory. The work on this before has been done in 2012 and again last year during the AWIA survey in 2018. And so the first phase that we're going to be working on is just to try to finalize or add to the list that we already have and make sure that we have an accurate list of all the interfacing applications out there. And then the hope in the coming months is to actually add in the data requirements for all the interfacing applications so that we can use that to prioritize API development over the course of SDWIS development. So we're hoping to have that, and we know that's going to be something very helpful both for us and for the individual states once they know their specific data needs. So any state that knows that will have a leg up in transition. So yeah, I guess with that's that item, and I'll pause for questions.
Excellent.
I guess we're on mute.
Thank you, Justin. I actually had a question for Deric. If you guys have questions out in the community for Justin, please submit them now. Just a quick one, Deric. Out of curiosity, how many states are in production for CMDP?
So I did reply in the chat box, but there are 10 states in production for CMDP at this point, and a number of other ones in pre-production, the pre-production environment. I don't have that count right off the top of my head, but there's at least 10. There are 10 in production.
Excellent. Thank you, Deric. Okay. I guess next up on our agenda, we're done with Justin. We've got the AWIA discussion. So Michael and Alex, if you guys are there and are ready to go.
All right, we are. Thank you, Anthony. This is Michael Plastino. I'll start this off and then kick it over to Alex. So the AWIA, American Water Infrastructure Act, has a number of provisions, 20, 25 or so. One of those falls within the responsibility of our branch, the infrastructure branch, and that is the report that's referenced here, the improved accuracy and availability of compliance monitoring data. So it's a strategic plan that we're required to submit to Congress. We need to submit that within a few months. It's a short timeline. I've asked Alex to take the lead on that for us. Alex has got a number of related activities that I think we're going to help this roll a lot. He's been, I think everyone knows, co-chairing the DMAC, a lot of relevant activity there, SDWIS data analyses, both for internal and external customers, and some report to Congress experience. Actually, my first experience with Alex was way back in the 2008 Clean Watershed Needs Survey report to Congress when I was in the Clean Water Office, and Alex was working with Tetra Tech. So I think Alex is going to do a fantastic job here. He's got a few more highlights to share for the plans for the next few months.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Under this new subsection of AWIA, where it directs us, the EPA, to develop a strategic plan for improving accuracy and availability of monitoring data to demonstrate compliance with the National Primary Drinking Water Regulations. So this strategic plan is going to evaluate methods of sharing data between public water systems, states, and EPA. Developing the report, EPA is going to evaluate any challenges faced in ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the data submitted, implementing electronic submission of data, and accessing that data. So the strategic plan will be provided to Congress, as Michael pointed out, and it's going to contain a summary of challenges and recommendations for improvements that could ultimately reduce the burden to the states, as well as improve data quality for everybody that's using these data. So it's kind of as a starting point for developing a plan, I'm going to gather a lot of information that has been collected previously. There was prior related efforts on the 2012 Information Management Work Group report, as well as all the work done to support the Compliance Monitoring Data Portal. And so there's also going to be discussions with key personnel. So over the next few months, I may be reaching out to some of you, some of the more key stakeholders, and your experiences and any challenges or also successes in implementing CMDP or in terms of electronically submitting your compliance data, and see what I can learn from you all over the next few months, and in terms of what you've experienced to help bolster the report and ultimately get this to Congress with our recommendations. So if you have any targeted suggestions or case studies or input that you'd like to provide, you can send me an email at porteous.alex@epa.gov, and be looking forward to chatting with a lot of you anyway, regardless. But if you have any other suggestions or thoughts that you'd like to pass on, please let me know. So I'm looking forward to chatting with some of you about that. So appreciate it, and that's all I've got on that point. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to type it into the box.
Great. Thank you, Michael and Alex. All right. So at this point, I think we are at our demo. Otman, are you ready to go? There we go. And I will kick it over to Otman.
Thanks, Anthony. All right, let's go ahead and keep going where we left it last time, that test case 33 with RTCR. So if you remember, we're trying to cover additional scenarios that will result in a E. coli violation. So the scenarios that you see there, 2, 3, and 4. For each one of them, we're going to pick a water system. So we started doing that in the last demo. We're going to continue here with the step where you're going to be adding repeat sample results so they can be matched with the repeat monitoring schedule, which was created as a result of the positive coliform. Just as a reminder, we're going to go through the first steps here, and once I switch to the application, you're going to see that some of them are already realized. So again, we're going to pick 3 community water systems. One of them is going to be large. It's going to serve more than 33,000 people. And for each one of them, we created the requirement to collect samples for RTCR. And the first set of samples for each one of those water systems is going to have a positive coliform. Then 2 of those water systems are going to have positive E. coli. And the last one, water system number 3, which is the largest, the one that serves more than 33,001 person, is going to have an E. coli negative. So I already reached step 3 and entered the routine samples, 1 for each water system. So we're going to look at that in the application, and we're going to continue with step 5. I already validated the candidate repeat monitoring schedules, because what happened is that because we entered those positive samples, the BRE created candidate repeat monitoring schedules for each one of those water systems. So let's switch to the application. And as a disclaimer here, you might notice some differences in terms of the UI or some functionality that I have here that you might not have in pre-prod once you get to pre-prod. This is because I'm using a local environment, if I may say. It's an environment that is within our infrastructure here and the contractor site. And I just wanted to proceed with the demo here in this environment because there are some issues that we're looking at in pre-prod, which is the environment you will be using for testing purposes. So keep that in mind as we're going through the demo here. And if you're going through the documentation that I was looking at for each test case, you might notice some differences between what's in the documentation and what's presented on the UI here on the user interface. All right, so back to the application here, I have my 3 water systems. Again, we're trying to cover those 3 additional scenarios. I created the schedules asking for the RTCR or coliform samples to be collected. So if I expand on this one, for example, remember we were trying to focus on the month of July for all of this. And this is the first water system, for example. It has a positive coliform and a positive E. coli. So what I did the exact same action for the 3 water systems, and BRE, or the system, created a repeat monitoring schedule that I validated. So what you see here, this repeat candidate schedule was actually a candidate at some point, and I just went ahead and validated it. And the last water system is the large water system. You can see here that it serves more than 40,000 people. So it's going to ask for 40 routine samples every month. Always remember to hit all periods here so you can see everything that is in the past. And because we're entering samples that were collected a long time ago, you can see that the BRE has created a bunch of candidate monitoring schedules, in this case, for all the sources within this water system. And because it's a large water system, you can see that we have a lot of triggered candidate monitoring schedules. We're not going to worry about these for now. We're going to focus on the repeat schedules. So again, as I say, I went ahead and validated that one as well. So what we're going to do next is, if you're going by the test case, we're going to enter the repeat samples. We're going to enter 3 for the first water system and 3 for the last water system. Remember, the last one is the large water system. And we're going to skip the second water system. We're not going to enter any samples for that one. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, we're entering samples for this one. And what we want to see is, just want to show you before I go to the sampling module, what we want to see is that those samples will be matched with this requirement here. So this requirement says I need 3 repeat samples that should be collected between this date and this date. And once I add the samples, I'm going to see some information populated here. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, go to the sampling module. Again, we're going to enter 3 repeat samples here at the distribution system. Let's go ahead and pick a sample ID that is going to make sense. So this is the water system number 1, covering scenario number 2. It's a repeat sample, so I'm going to give it this ID here for now. It just helps me remember the sample IDs that I gave and have them have a certain context that follows the test case. All right, so my repeats were collected on July 19th, 2018. And again, because I selected repeat here, it's going to ask me for a original sample. We're going to pick the positive coliform that was collected on July 16th here. And because I'm going to enter 2 additional samples that share almost the same information, except for the sample ID, obviously, I'm going to use the set default values widget here. So you see, once you turn that on, checkboxes will be displayed next to each field. And if you want to carry that field forward to the next sample that you're going to be entering, you can just go ahead and check those boxes. So I want to carry over the water system, the facility, the lab, the type of sample I'm collecting. They were all collected on the same date. So let's check all of them, copy that. Just copy the sample ID because I usually use the same. It's just that I add a number just to differentiate between the samples. All right, so we're entering a positive coliform for this one. And this one was, the analysis was completed on July 23rd, 2018. And then the E. coli is negative, so we're going to leave it as absent. And the analysis end date is on July 23rd. All right, let's go ahead and keep going. My next sample, it's also going to be a repeat of the same water system. So we'll add the coliform. This time it's absent, and we're not going to have to enter the E. coli. My last repeat, same thing. My coliform is absent, and the E. coli is optional, so I'm not going to enter it. All right, so I'm done with the samples that you see. If you're looking at the Word document, I just entered these 3 samples here that were collected on July 19th and analyzed by or on July 23rd. Or the analysis was completed on July 23rd. We're going to go ahead and enter 3 repeat samples for the last water system. So let's go back to inventory. So remember, this is the large one that is asking for 40 routine samples every month. If I expand or look in the past, you can see that I have my repeat that was created because of that positive that was collected in July 2018. So what I should see after I enter the samples, the repeat samples, that those 3 should be matched with this period here. Let's go to the sampling module and enter 3 repeat samples. This guy, the distribution system. This is the water system number 3. We're covering scenario 4 with that water system. And we're entering repeat samples. Okay, pick repeat here. Make sure you select repeat here so you can enter the original sample. All right, they were all collected on the same date as well. Go ahead.
Hey, Otman, your audio is faded a bit.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a little better, thanks.
All right, thank you, Scott. All right, so here I'm selecting the original sample. And I'm going to keep going. Oh, let's go ahead and use this feature here because all the repeats will be collected on the same date. I'm going to check all these boxes here that I'm going to carry forward. All right, let's enter the first result. So this is a present coliform result. The analysis was completed on July 23rd, and on to the next one. Next one is going to have a negative coliform result, so it's going to be absent. And then because of that, we're just going to skip the E. coli result. We're not going to add that. And I'm on my last repeat for this water system. And it's going to have the same result here, negative coliform. And the analysis end date is going to be July 23rd. Right, let's go ahead and hit the save button here. And if we go back to the test case, what we've done is that we added these samples here, 6 samples in total, 3 repeat samples for each water system. So let's look at the expected outcomes. We should see a E. coli violation for water system number 1. So if I go here, this is the global view for violations. Just filter, for example, by the water system ID. This one is a 001. Sometimes you might want to give it a couple minutes. It's going to refresh, but it can always go back to the inventory and check that on this side. But before we check on that violation, let's look at the samples and see if they got matched with the requirements. In this case, I want to look at the repeat, and you can see here that I have 3 samples that were collected. Those are the 3 repeats that I just entered. If you remember the IDs that I used, these are the IDs that I used. And we only added the E. coli result for one of them, the very first one. So that's why you see E. coli here. And the last water system here, the large one, again, make sure you hit all periods. You can see here that I have these samples that were matched with the requirement or the repeat monitoring schedule. And for this one, we didn't enter any E. coli results for the 3 repeat samples, but the very first one was positive. It had a positive coliform result. So these 2 outcomes here are good. Let's check on the candidate repeat samples monitoring schedule for the last water system, the large one. So it's this one here. All right, so we do have the repeat that was created right here. It was created a few minutes ago as a result of that positive that was added. So it was created at 3:29 p.m. Eastern time. And the last outcome that we want to look at is that E. coli MCL violation for the first water system. Now, I think let's check on the water system. So that might be a known issue here where the violation might not be displayed on this view here. But you could, let's see, you could look up the violation by going to the global violation view. And what I did is that I filtered on that water system ID that I have for water system number 1. And if you double click on it, you can see that it's a candidate that was created a few minutes ago. It was as a result of entering that positive E. coli again. And it's an MCL violation for this water system. So that's one of the outcomes that we have here. We should see a E. coli MCL violation for water system number 1. What we're going to do next is run MNR. And what should happen is that we should see the MCL violation we're expecting for water system number 2. As remember, we added the positive E. coli and we didn't enter any samples after that. And for water system number 3, we're going to see a MCL violation as well. If you remember, these are the repeats that we entered, and we didn't add the E. coli result. So we're going to run MNR compliance, and the system is going to tell us that there is a violation, a candidate violation for that water system. And in addition to that, we should see a 3A violation because the water system that is supposed to be collecting 40 samples did not do so within the period that we're talking about here, July 2018. So going back to the system here, and the way you're going to run compliance is by going to this or expanding this section here when you're looking at monitoring schedules. And you're going to select RTCR as a rule. As I said, we're covering the month of July. So you're going to go from July 1st to July 31st. And hit the run button. Do the same for water system number 2. So I'm switching tabs here. Expand this, select RTCR. And run compliance for the month of July. All right, and the last one here. Again, click here to expand this section. Select RTCR. Then go from July 1st to July 31st. All right. So we ran MNR for the month of July of 2018. Let's go ahead and check for the MCL violations. Let's start with water system number 2. It's this one here. Remember, this is the one for which we didn't enter any repeats. If you expand here on the monitoring schedule page, you can see that they're missing because we didn't enter any. Now you want to go to the violations section here. Again, there is a known issue here where the violation is not displayed here, but let me just try something out real quick. All right, just to, as a workaround, you want to close the tab and open it again for that water system. And you can see now that I have my MCL violation right here that was created as a result of that MNR run. It was created a minute ago. It's a 1A E. coli violation, and the compliance period covers the month of July. Let's look at water system number 3. Remember, this is the large one. Let's see if we can look at that violation again. You want to close the tab of that water system, look for it again, open the tab again, and then navigate to violations, and you should see the violation at that point. All right, you go to violations. Here you go. So I have my MCL E. coli for this water system as well. If you double click, you can see the details. Covers the month of July, and it was created a couple of minutes ago. And if we look at the last one, the last outcome, we're going to see a 3A minor violation because our routine schedule was asking for 40 samples, and we only entered 1 sample, if you remember. So that's why this violation was created, and it covers the month of July 2018. So as a result of that MNR run, the system is going to go and see if there are any samples, and if not, it's going to make certain decisions. And the decisions that it made here is that it created the MCL violations for E. coli for those 2 water systems that cover scenario 3 and 4, and also it created a 3A violation for water system number 3 because it was supposed to collect 40 samples, but the system only found 1 sample, 1 routine sample for the month of July. So that is test case 33. Again, looking at the E. coli violations and MCL violations and how they are created. Moving on then. Are there any questions before I move on to the next test case?
Yeah, so just repeat a couple of them. One was, of course, you were running MNR compliance at an individual water system level by a single rule. That approach is for testing purposes to limit the number of systems and schedules that might get checked at once. That is not how it will work in production. That's all I had.
Thank you, Scott. All right, we're going to keep going here with test case 40, and this is the display of the originating result for repeat, triggered, and confirmation monitoring schedules. We're going to pick a community water system. It's going to have a positive coliform and a nitrate result that is above 10 milligram per liter. So it's going to go above the MCL. What the system is going to do, it's going to create a candidate repeat monitoring schedule, just like what it did for the previous scenario, for example, or test case. And we're going to look at what is the original sample that was used by the system to make the decision and create that repeat schedule. And that information is going to be displayed on the user interface. And the same thing should occur for triggered monitoring schedules and the nitrate confirmation schedules. Let's go ahead and find a community water system that serves less than 1,000 people. And we're going to add a schedule for RTCR requiring one routine every month, and we'll start it on January 1st, 2018. And another schedule for nitrate, asking for one routine every quarter, and we'll have it start on January 1st, 2018. All right, so you get rid of these tabs here. I'm gonna go with this water system that I pre-selected. It's a groundwater community, serves 70 people, and it has one source. Go ahead and add the requirements here for RTCR and nitrate. The RTCR is at the distribution system. We'll have it at one routine every month, and we'll get it started on January 1st, 2018. All right, so I have my schedule. Just double check the periods. So you want to select all periods here, expand the schedule, and see that it goes all the way back to January 1st, 2018. Next, we're going to add the NO3 schedule. Have it at the source here. All right. Then we'll have it at one routine. One routine every. Water. And then we'll get it started on January 1st, 2018. Hit the save button. All right, so I have my nitrate schedule asking for one routine every quarter, and then I have my RTCR asking for one routine every month. So double check here that my facility is active, because if it's not active, the BRE is not going to consider it for compliance determination. Right? Next, now that we have the requirements or we have the monitoring schedule set up, we're going to enter two samples, one for RTCR and the other for nitrate. And the sample for RTCR is going to have two results, one for coliform and the other for E. coli. The coliform is going to be present, E. coli is going to be absent. And for nitrate, we're going to set the result to 10.8 milligram per liter. Right, let's go ahead and add those results in. Go to the, again, I like to copy the water system ID because I use that to enter data. All right, so this is my water system ID. This is my routine number 1. And this one was collected on July 16th, 2018. Again, we say the coliform is going to be present. The analysis completion date is going to be July 19th, 2018. And the agency receipt date will be July 20th, 2018. And we'll add the E. coli result here. It'll be negative, so we'll leave it absent. Analyzed on the same day, or the analysis was completed on the same day, please. And it was received on the same day by the agency on July 20th, 2018. All right, so my coliform results are in. Let's go ahead and enter the nitrate results. So for this one, we're going to use a ChemRad screen. Same water system. And we added the requirement for the source. All right, collected on July the 9th, 2018. And for this one, we're going to set the result to 10.8 milligram per liter. Analysis completed on July 18th, 2018, and received by the agency on July 20th, 2018. All right, hit the save button. Now we're going to go back to the monitoring schedules view. Let's make sure you select all periods here because we're doing a lot of things in the past. Okay, so a couple of things here for RTCR. Created a triggered schedule. Let me collapse the inventory tree here so we have more space. So I created a repeat schedule at the distribution system because of that positive. It also created a triggered schedule at the source. And if we switch to nitrate, it created a confirmation schedule at the entry point or at the source here. So you're gonna see as many triggered schedules as many facilities you have in your water system, as long as they're active, as I said earlier. So we'll start with the repeat schedule here. And what you're gonna see here in this field is, well, before the originating result field, you're gonna see the requirement. So this is asking for repeat samples to be collected, 3 of them between this date and this date. You can see that a lot of fields are still enabled, so you can potentially modify information here before you validate. But it also references the original sample that was used to make this decision or to have this record created or proposed by the BRE. So it gives you the sample ID, then it tells you that this sample was collected on this date. It's a routine. It was collected at this facility, at this sampling point, and the analyte 3100 has a positive result. And at the very end, you have the reporting lab. If we open up the triggered schedule here, same concept, you have the requirement, and then at the bottom, you have the originating result with the same information, sample ID, and then collection date, sample type, the facility where it was collected, and the sampling point, et cetera, et cetera. So that's for the repeat schedules and triggered schedules that are created by the BRE. Now, if we go to the nitrate one, the confirmation that was created because of that 10.8 milligram per liter, it's thinking. All right, so in this case, again, you have the requirement for one confirmation sample to be collected, and then it references the original sample that caused this schedule to be created by the BRE. At the very end here, before the reporting lab, you have the actual result for this analyte for 1040 nitrate. So yeah, that's pretty much it for test case 40, the ability to see the original result, which is the fact that was used by the BRE to create the candidate schedules, repeat, triggered, and confirmation for nitrate schedules, for example. Before I move on to test case 35, any questions on this one? All right, let's keep going then. We're gonna go to test case 35 here. This is for DBP. We're gonna talk about sampling point violations. So in this case, for test case 35, when we set the requirement to collect samples for TTHM and HA5, we're gonna add or specify which sampling points the samples need to be collected at. So that's basically the purpose of this. And then at some point, we're going to run MNR compliance, and violations should be created because samples were not collected at the specified sampling points. So you're going to need a subpart H community water system for this test case that serves between 500 and 1,999 people. And you're going to enter a DDBP monitoring schedule asking for TTHM and HA5 samples to be collected 2 every quarter, so 2 routine samples every quarter. And we'll have the schedule start on July 1st, 2017. And we're going to be a little bit more specific and say that those samples need to be collected on the 2nd month of each quarter. So that's the purpose of the state designated period. So once you establish the requirement, you're going to enter 6 samples. Each sample is going to have 2 results, one for TTHM and one for HA5. And you can see here that we're going to start with the 3rd quarter of 2017, so we'll collect samples in August, then we'll add samples for the 4th quarter of 2017, and then the 1st quarter of 2018. And what we're doing here is we're collecting at the sampling points that were referenced in the monitoring schedules, and then at some point in the 3rd sample that you see here, we're going to select a sampling point that is not in the monitoring schedule. So it's not going to be one of those 2 here. And we're just going to keep going, and we should see certain results according to the samples that we're entering. So let me pick the water system that I have for this scenario here. It's a surface water system that serves 650 people. I go to the monitoring schedule here. I have already created that. As you can see, it's asking for 2 analytes or samples for 2 analytes here, TTHM and HA5. And I had it start on July 1st, 2017. And I even specified the state designated period to be the second month of the quarter. And these are the two sampling points where these samples should be collected. And what I did in addition to that is that I added the first 4 samples that you see in the test case document. So if I go back to the test case here, test case 35, I entered these 2 for the third quarter of 2017. If I want to, and you can see that they were collected at the right location specified by the monitoring schedule. So if I go down here, look at this period here, August 31st. Click here, you can see that this one is at the sampling point number 1, and this one is at sampling point number 2. So these are my results for HA5. And if I click on this one, I'm going to see that I have my results for TTHM, and they were both collected at different sampling points. So we're good for this quarter, the third quarter of 2017. Let's look at the last quarter of 2017. So the last quarter of 2017, if I go back here, the first sample, we did not select a sampling point that was within the monitoring schedule. And this, the second sample, we did select a sampling point within that was specified in the monitoring schedule. So that's why you see here only 1. I did enter a sample, but I did not select one of those 2 sampling points that I have in the monitoring schedules. And that's why I can only see the sampling point number 2 for DBP. What I'm going to do next is enter these last 2 samples. And for the first one, we're going to select sampling point number 1. And for sample number 6, we're just going to select the sampling point that is not in the monitoring schedule. So different than DBP1 or DBP2. We're just going to select a different sampling point. So let's go ahead and enter those 2 samples here. So they were collected on February 12th, so we're good. We're on the second month of the quarter. And the agency receive date is going to be March 2nd of 2018. All right, let me get rid of this guy. Add looking at the distribution system. So again, for the first one, we're going to select this sampling point, and if you remember, it is in the schedule. 35. Okay, and we say it was collected on this date. And I know I'm going to be using a lot of this information again, so I'm just going to do this. And then you can go ahead and use the rapid entry here to add these 2 analytes quickly. You can see if you select the group, and you have your analytes here, you can go ahead and add them quickly. You know that we're going to be using the same agency receive date, for example. So let's enter that, which is March 2nd, 2018. And if you hit add analyte, those 2 are going to be added to the results section here. All right, so for the first sample that was collected at sampling point number 1, we have 8.7 microgram per liter. And for HA5, we have 11.2 microgram per liter. All right, So we're good on this sample. I'm gonna copy this. I'm using the information that I need to use. All right, let's go to the next one. 2 was collected on the same date. Just going to expand this. You can see that it's going to keep the information that I entered in the previous page. So all I had to do here is hit add analyte, and then enter 5.5 microgram per liter for TTHM. And no, not detected for HA5. So we're going to switch this one on. And go ahead. Oh, before I save, you want to make sure that you select a different sampling point. So here, I'm not going to select 1 or 2. I'm going to select a different one. That's the very last sample that you're going to enter in test case 35. So I just entered this one here, 5.5 microgram per liter for TTHM and a not detected result for HA5. Okay, so let's go back to the monitoring schedule view. Expand this guy here. All right, so we already looked at the last quarter of 2017, and you can see here for the first quarter of 2017, the system didn't pick up that sample that I added at that sampling point that was not a DBP number 1 or DBP number 2 because it didn't meet the requirement that we have for 35. Exactly the same thing that happened in the last quarter of 2017. It's just that for the last quarter of 2017, I believe we used DBP2. Let me just check. Yes, we used DBP2. All right. Next, we're going to run MNR compliance, and we should see violations created because whatever samples we collected in these 2 quarters, those 2 samples were not collected at the right sampling points. So to run MNR compliance, again, you expand this little area here, select DBP, and we're going to run MNR compliance for, we're going to go from July 1st. We're going to try to cover 4 quarters with this one. July 1st, 2017, and go all the way to June 30th, 2018. All right, hit the run button. Okay. And what we should see is a bunch of violations here created for TTHM and HA5. So we'll start with the last quarter of 2017. Remember, we only collected 1 sample at the right sampling point there for this quarter. Same thing for the first quarter of 2018. So let's look at those 2 quarters. I go to violations. All right, let's start with this one. The compliance period goes from October 1st, 2017. This one is for HA5. So again, it was because we didn't collect at the right sampling point. And we should have another one for TTHM. It's right here. Again, it covers the last quarter of 2017. This one is for TTHM. It's 27 type violation. Same thing for the first quarter of 2018. So you can see here that I have one for TTHM. And then I should have another one for HA5. And then on the second quarter of 2018, we just didn't enter any samples. If you remember, we stopped on the first quarter of 2018. So in the second quarter of 2018, which goes from April 1st to June 30th, we should see the same type of violation. It's a 27 code violation. It covers the second quarter of 2018. So we would have one for HA5 and we would have another one for TTHM. And it's right here for TTHM. These were created a few minutes ago as a result of that MNR compliance run. So you might be asking yourself why the two analytes are not grouped together in one row or one violation, and then they would have the same information. This is something actually that we're working on. It's a future functionality that we're going to have, or we still didn't implement. For now, any monitoring violations that you're going to see created by the BRE, the BRE creates one per analyte, and that's why we have 6 here. Remember, 3 quarters, 2 analytes, so that's why we have 6 violations. And that's pretty much it for test case 35. Before I move on to 37, are there any questions?
There were, oh, one just came in. I'll go ahead and read it, but, and another one came in. So first question was, will the MCLs calculate and actually show up on the compliance report? And I believe that she's referring to the LRAAs. And I don't know, I missed it if you showed it, but yeah, you can go ahead and show that the LRAs do display from this location and the OELs as well, as you can see right there. We do also intend to add at the bottom of the violation form a display of the results and compliance value that led to the candidate determination. We don't, as you can see, we don't have it there at this point. We've got some of that design, but we've haven't completed it, so we are hiding it for the time being. Okay, next question then was, what if a sample takes additional samples in a month due to extreme circumstances? Will the samples be averaged? Yes, the answer is they will be averaged. Right now, that averaging is at the frequency of the monitoring. And so, you know, they would be averaged for the quarter. And then that average would be used in the running annual average. So whether you're talking locational running annual average, where of course it's at sampling point, or you're talking a other chronic contaminant like arsenic, where it isn't sampling point defined but facility defined, you will get an average on those. I'll provide that response here shortly. Next question. Will this cause violations to be generated because of operator error? If so, will those violations be able to be deleted? So operator error, of course, there's, I'm not sure what you might be thinking of, but there would be no way for the software to know about that. So yes, it would create the candidate violation. And at that point, there's 2 possible things that could happen. One, you go ahead and validate the violation. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to your additional comment there, Samantha. One is you validate the violation, you send out the violation letter, and the water system comes back and demonstrates to you that there was an error of some sort. Like for instance, as you just said, they maybe selected the wrong sampling point, or recorded the wrong sampling point or something like that. At that point, you have the option of rescinding that violation. That's a little more, requires, depending on how you set up your roles, may require somebody higher up to rescind it. So there's that process. So if you catch it after you validated the violation, you could go through that rescind violation process. If you catch it before you validate the candidate, then you can simply reject the candidate violation. And so that's it for questions at this point.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so we're going to move on to 37 here. The previous one, we were making sure that the samples were collected at the right sampling points that were defined in the monitoring schedule. This one, the system is going to make sure that the samples were collected every 90 days. So if that doesn't occur, there's a violation that is going to be created, a candidate violation. For this one, we're going to look at a community water system. And we're going to set a requirement to collect samples for TTHM and HA5. And we're also going to make sure that the water system has, at the treatment plant level, a treatment that for disinfection using the process that involves chlorine. So it could be a 401, 403, 421, or 423 process. So let's look at that from the application standpoint and see what we're talking about here. So this one, we're going to use a different water system here. It's a surface water that serves 600 people. And this is what I'm talking about. If you go to the, what we used to call the inventory tree, I guess we're still calling it that, there's a section here for treatments under treatments under the treatment plan. You can look at the information of your treatment plant here by clicking on that eyeball. But if you look over here, you can expand this and see what are the treatments that are in process in this facility, this treatment plant. And I can see here that I have one that combines a process that involves chlorine aiming to disinfect. So if I open the details, the objective is disinfection and the process used is 421 involving chlorine, so I should be good. That's one of the requirements of test case 37. You want to make sure that you have that in there. All right, once you do that, we're going to set the requirement to collect for samples for HA5 and TTHM every quarter. And we're talking about 2 routine. And we'll have the schedule start on January 1st, 2017. All right, let's go ahead and add that requirement in. Well, actually, to speed up a little bit the process, because if I go down here to the list of samples that need to be entered, we're talking about 8 samples that need to be entered. All right, so what I did prior to this call is that I entered 6 of them, and together we're going to enter the last 2. So if I go back to the monitoring schedule here, hit all periods, expand, let's look at the details of the requirement first. So we're talking about 2 routine samples every quarter. We had it start on January 1st, 2017, so we're good. And if I scroll down, as I said, I entered 6 samples already. Oh, I entered more than that. Okay, 8 samples. You can see that the system is going to match those with the requirements that you see here. So we started on January 1st, 2017. And these are the samples that I entered previously, going by the table that we have in test case 37. All right, so we covered the first quarter of 2017 and the second quarter of 2017. So that's sample samples 3 and 4. And then on the third quarter of 2017, those are these 2 samples that you see here, collected on September the 18th. I already entered those actually, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the ones that I'm going to enter now are for the last quarter of 2017, collected on October the 9th, 2017. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. Pick this water system here, and we're going to go with the last 2 samples. All right, distribution system, doesn't matter which sampling point we're looking at here. So this is sample number 7 of this water system. And as I say, this one was collected on October the 9th, 2017. Let's use the set default values because we're going to have to enter one last sample. And then we're going to use this feature here where you can enter data a little bit quickly. All right, add these 2 analytes. So for TTHM, for sample number 7, I'm at 59.4 microgram per liter, and the agency receipt date is October 30th, 2017. I could have entered that as well. But anyways, for HA5, I have 33.7 microgram per liter. And then the agency receipt date is October 30th, 2017. Okay, so this is sample number 7. Let's go ahead and enter sample number 8. Okay, same water system, same location, different sample. This is sample number 8. Satisfying the requirement to collect 2 samples. No, sorry. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to use the rapid data entry. Okay, so if I click here, you can see that my data is still there. Let's populate this guy so we don't have to enter it twice. Add analyte. So for the last sample, if you're following on that table in test case 37, I have 46.7 for TTHM and 21.8 microgram per liter for HA5. Received on the same date. I'm good to go. All right, let's go ahead and hit save. And now, yeah, if you've been following with the document here, I just entered these 2 samples here, the very last 2 samples in this table, which brings up the total of samples that you're going to be entering for this test case to 8. So if I expand here, all the way down. All right. So expected outcome is we looked at these here earlier. The samples were matched with the first quarter of 2017, second quarter of 2017, not for the third quarter of 2017, but they were matched for the last quarter of 2017. So you can imagine there is that failure there where samples were not collected every 90 days. So if you remember, the collection date on this one was April the 10th. And then if we look at the collection date for this one, it's September the 18th. So there's that failure right there. So that's why the BRE didn't pick these samples and didn't match them with the requirement. So those are the outcomes after you enter all these samples in. Samples collected for January, April, October are associated with the appropriate periods, but the ones that were collected in September were not. What we're going to do next is run MNR compliance for the July period, not July period, but the third quarter of 2017. And we should see violations created there. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So we're running MNR compliance for DBP. Start with July 1st, 2017. And we're covering the third quarter, so we're going to go all the way to September 30th, 2017. Hit the run button. Get a quick confirmation message that the request is submitted. So the BRE took that and created violations as a result of that. So what it did is that it went ahead and looked for the samples that were collected in September, found out that they were not collected within the appropriate time frame, and it created violation 27. One for TTHM, you can see here the compliance period is the third quarter of 2017, and one for HAA5. Again, they were created a few seconds ago as a result of that MNR compliance. And again, all these violations created by BRE, they're candidates. You still have to validate them for them to be actual violations after you review all the information or modify information here if needed. So that's for test case 37, failure to collect every 90 days for DBP. Any questions on this one? Scott, I'm not sure if you see any.
Yeah, no questions. Let's see here. Hang on just a second.
Yes.
I think there maybe was one or two to talk about here. Sorry. So one question was, some folks noticed that you entered total results for the totals rather than just entering the individual individual trihalomethanes and individual haloacetic acids. And so the question was, will we be able to enter just the individual results and still have the prime determined compliance? And the answer is yes. The BRE is coded to handle either direction with if the totals are entered, those take priority. And the BRE uses those, but if there isn't a total, it uses the individuals to determine the total value and does compliance that way. And then a question, can we repeat these test cases on the test site? Yes, that is the reason for demonstrating them, is to, one, get a recording so that you have that to refer to, and then two, to go ahead and go to the pre-prod site and run the test cases on your own. And then can we get a copy of your notes?
Hey, Scott?
Yeah.
This is Tina. Sorry to cut in. So just to follow up on the answer you just provided. So we do have a known issue right now in the pre-production environment, which is what everybody has access to, right? So to provide some additional context to Taylor's question. So yes, you are supposed to be able to replicate all of these test cases in the pre-production environment, but currently we are experiencing some issues. So we'll make sure to post a note out through the AWIA blog to put the notification out that we are experiencing some issues, and we'll make sure to update everyone once the test environment is available and is running as expected again, so you can do the test cases. in terms of the notes, it was provided, we provided test case instructions to everyone on the last call. Anthony, are they able to access it now through the document?
The test case instructions?
Yes.
Those should be posted, but I will double check after we get off the call.
Okay. Okay.
I think I posted the test cases through user voice and then on the ASDA website, but I'll double check to make sure everything's there.
Okay. Sorry, Scott, that was the clarification I wanted to make. Thank you.
Very good. Another question came in wondering about setting a specific week of a specific month in which to require those the DBP sampling. There is currently the ability to set the specific month each quarter, but not down to the weekly basis. That the ability to do it at the weekly basis is in as a requirement that will get prioritized at some point. Otman is showing you right now that state designated period is how that works. So if I'm in here and I have a quarterly frequency, you'll see that the state designated period label will show up as month, which he'll show you that here shortly. And then you can specify the first, second, or third month. And how we will enable this to optionally do it at the weekly basis as an alternative, we'll have to figure out. He's showing you now that you can also do it on annual frequencies, and you can specify the first through fourth quarter for the particular exact period of time in each year that you need to collect that sample. Thanks, Otman.
And I know we wanted to save the last minute or so for an announcement. So, Otman, was there anything else you wanted to present?
Yes, but I suggest we leave that for later time. Case 39. Efficiencies and site visits. So, yeah, we'll get to it.
Yep, we'll just save it for the next one.
And with that, I think that's all we have for the demo today. It's all yours,
Great.
team.
All right.
Thanks, Otman.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay, so I wanted to see if Barrett is still with us, and if so, Barrett, you are unmuted.
I am here.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that this is my last call working for the North Dakota Drinking Water Program. I have taken a job elsewhere. I am not getting away from SDWIS though. I'm actually going to be helping Renee with some of the QA checks. So just wanted to thank everyone for everything and their support and help and everything over the years. And I will see you in July at the DMUC, and take care.
Awesome.
It's been a ride.
Thank you, Barrett, for all of your contributions over your entire career here for the Drinking Water Program and SDWIS. You've been a major...
Yeah, 20 years is all.
Yeah. So you've been a major pillar of kind of the state effort, and so you will be sorely missed, but it'll be good working with you in another capacity. So we look forward to catching up with you at the DMUC. All right, and with that, I wanted to thank the panel. Just a heads up for anyone still on the webinar, I sent out a pretty big email earlier today, just talking about the Data Management Users Conference, some openings that we have in the SDWIS Prime governance, and then making sure that everybody's hooked into communications. So if you didn't get that email, you're probably not hooked up in my communications. So shoot me, Anthony DeRosa at ASDWA, an email, and I'll get you set up. Otherwise, we're going to be doing some stuff in the next couple of weeks to try to clean up some of the contact databases that we have, and I'll be coordinating with EPA on that. So thank you all for joining again. Tina, anything from you guys?
Nothing additional from us.
Excellent. Thanks again to Scott and Otman from Attain, and Tina and the team over at EPA, and of course for all of you guys for joining us today. I'll have a recording of this broadcast to the ASDA website tomorrow by COB. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see you on the next one.